I work with small to medium-sized businesses that are experiencing some sort of chaotic growth.
It's a constant evolution of,
you
got to get better. You got to get better. It's got to change.
A lot of people look at that and say like, well, that's a gift that you've been given. No, that was a lot of hard work that we had to create.
For me, the perspective shift inside of that is like, it kind of backs up what I've always said. Like if you create a vision that's big enough, anything's possible. What does it look like to like get in touch with you or like pursue something like that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I would say
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Barndo Show. I'm excited for my guest today. We take a little bit of time to talk about a lot of different things, from the process of building a barndominium, how to prepare your land, what's the first step to get started, what's the right things to do, the wrong things to do. And then we also lean in and we talk a little bit about business, and we've used this platform to bring coaches that we've worked with and different people from different spheres of influence that are just overall in the process of helping you get systemized and equipped and ready to go and lead a company and grow a company and see success inside your business. And Ren, that's exactly where you come from. So I'll give you a second to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, my name's Ren Flickinger. I am a business coach. That term is very loosely thrown around these days, and there's a lot of people probably rolling their eyes on that. But I am a business coach. Ultimately, what we do and what I do is I work with small to medium-sized businesses that are experiencing some sort of chaotic growth inside of their business. You're no stranger to that, and help them create vision, strategy, plan, and then help them execute on those things for them.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny how you and I became connected, because just a couple episodes ago, I had Chris Breen on here, and was talking about like he was super instrumental in those early days of us creating an operating system inside the company and all those things. And in that I talked a little bit about like just sitting at a table and like shooting from the hip and like putting things on a board, and then looking back from a 3-year perspective going, man, we got real close to all that stuff because we had a mission. We had an idea of what we were doing, and we were executing towards something that was real, and we weren't just kind of going with the punches. And then shortly after that, he connected me to you and him and Cullen's relationship, and then how you were involved in that. And we had coffee, and it was like instantly I was like, yeah, you're coming on the show. So.
Yeah, I would say the Breen machine has introduced a lot of people to a lot of people, which is really cool. And he actually just did that to me yesterday by surprise with somebody else, which was super cool. But I think ultimately, like even just going back before you and I met, how I met Chris is such a unique experience too. And then even further back through Cullen, who started our company, I found him through my financial advisor, but I found him through Nick Stevens at Legacy. Yeah. Right. So then Nick messages me and he's like, hey, you should know this guy. He kind of overlaps with what you want to do with your business. And I met Cullen, and it was a match made in heaven, just like a total God thing ultimately that we met. And then he introduces me to Chris, and I actually had coffee with Chris the day that you guys were shooting the pod. And he's like, hey, I'm actually going to meet, you need to know TJ. And he's like, let me try to figure out how we make that happen. And then here we are. It's wild.
Well, you have a wild story of how it came to be. I think a lot of times people get in this mindset of like a business coach, but it comes from a ton of experience, and like, and there's certain things about it where, coaching is not necessarily like, every day you're sending someone a text like, hope you have the best day ever. That's not what it is. No. And it's so misconstrued if you've never been in a container. And I sit up here and tell people all the time, in the last 3 years, between Ross and I, we spent close to $500,000 in coaching. And we reap the benefits of it every single day. Now, are there some where we wrote checks with no return? Sure. But there's more where we wrote checks and the return was so massive. I can share with Chris, like that initial investment to go with him and build that plan had 100 times, or 100 times or 1,000 times results for us, to where, we sowed this amount of money into it and we stuck to it. But, and then I think also the flip side of that is a lot of people think it's a magic wand, and it's not. The work required is required whether you have a game plan or not. It's
Yeah.
just a coach is there to help give you a game plan, and the execution's ultimately up to you as the individual. So
Yeah, totally. And I would say, like, I'm not even the one creating the game plan. I'm there to facilitate those conversations and ask the right questions to lead you guys to what your ultimate vision is going to be for the company. I mean, when you said 3 years from now, we didn't think we would achieve it. It takes a good facilitator and a good coach to really lead you to those spots. And then somebody in the room has to say, like, can we actually do that?
Right.
And then we start to build a plan and some strategy to get there. But ultimately, like, I'm just a facilitator. I don't make any of those decisions. I'm there to help. And I think, you talked about coaching, and coaching really, when I said people eye roll, like, it gets a bad rap because ultimately, like, there is a segment of what I do where people have just kind of paid to play, so to speak, and they're just kind of speaking from theory, and they've never actually built a business. They've never actually scaled anything or even lived in a world where a business scales multi-million dollars. And when you live in it and you see it and you operate in that container, you can really help people see around corners without speaking from theory and saying, like, hey, I've gone through this. I get what you're going through.
Well, and the cool perspective that you had was you were like an entrepreneur inside
Yeah.
of a machine that went from this to this.
Yeah.
And you saw a lot in a short period of time. Like, share a little bit of, like, I mean, we don't got to go details, but like you were in a company that was a relative, small to medium sized business that turned into a megalith.
Yeah.
And you were there for that entire process.
Yeah. Yeah. I was, so I came from a foundation world, which is, no stranger to you, but ultimately it was repairing foundations. And when I got hired on, I left Apple, as an account executive to go and work in a small family owned and operated business, or what I thought was a small family owned and operated business. When I got hired on, they were right around $20 million a year, somewhere around there. And one location. And fast forward 5 years, over $100 million business in 8 locations. And, that business scaled a ton. It required a coach. We hired a coach a year into my employment there, and we went through the process, and then we kind of outgrew the system that was put in front of us because the system that we were using was really good for what we were struggling with in the beginning. But as we grew it, so we started to kind of, outgrow it. And then we went to 8 locations, and somebody internally had to be the coach that went out and did those things and implemented and taught these small businesses how to run and how to operate. And that was me.
Right.
I got to go ahead and do that. So I kind of got to be a coach for 7 years before I actually went out and did it on my own as a business owner to do it.
Yeah. What a cool concept. Like, to be able to literally just do it inside of one little ecosystem over and over and over again. You really get to refine, and where constraints come up, and you know what limiting beliefs are, and like you get to it. You have firsthand experience in it, and then that correlates over to so many things because every business struggles with the same exact things. It may look different in execution, it may look different in product delivery, but over and over, overwhelmingly, it's the same problems, right? Sell more, produce more, have less callbacks. And how do you do that? And how do you grow? And how do you have the right people? And all those things, and again, I say all the time, like in the beginning, our success was, Ross and I are workaholics, and we are the lunatics that will write something on a board and then kill ourselves to make it come true. But I give a lot of the credit to the people who helped us strategize that. And now it's a shift to where the credit lies on the people in this organization, and it's less and less about us and more about the people that are executing and dreaming and bringing new ideas and new concepts and redeveloping things. And I shared on an earlier episode, like we're kind of in this weird thing, and you talked a little bit about that. Like, hey, we hired someone, we built an infrastructure that was good then, and we outgrew it. We did the same. Mm-hmm. So from those days early on with Chris to now, we outgrew the system that we had in place that was so great. And so now we're recultivating it. And not only that, but we kind of like achieved a milestone in the business of like, we hit the mission. We fulfilled it. Well, you need a new mission. Mm-hmm. The vision never changed, but the mission is different. So the mission's getting rewritten, and the core values are getting more bolted on as the mission shifts. Well, how do we continue carrying these same core values, but frame them up in more layers so more people can be impacted by them as we have different levels of leadership and different things that are happening? And, it never stops. It never stops unless you just plateau, unless you just become completely satisfied and you never grow and you never shrink. Then the operating system you have is great.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a constant evolution of,
Oh yeah.
you got to get better. You got to get better. It's got to change. This has got to get, this is different. This is breaking now. We got to put a new thing on. And like, it never ends.
It never ends. Yeah. In our world, we call that business owner dead man walking, because that's the person where, you know, you go to a, like, hey man, let's go to coffee. Let's talk about life. How are things going? And they're just like, yeah, things are good. Everything's good. And you can see like the death in their eyes where you're like, dude, you're dying slowly and you just don't want to tell me. But we call that, dead man walking. But there's a lot of businesses, you know, that have plateaued, don't know how to push through, you know, like that ceiling that they're hitting, whether it's people or purpose or any of those things. They just don't know how to push through it. And ultimately, like, you have a choice to make. And, you know, the choice that you made was go out and seek help and get a coach to help you through that, and go find the right people that are going to help you push through that. Some people make the choice to close the doors, you know, and then some people make the choice to just be dead man walking forever and never grow. I'm good with making $3 million a year for the next 20 years and never growing my employees and never providing any extra opportunities. Let's just stay afloat. And that's fine. Whatever choice you make is fine. But you ultimately, you get to that point, you have to make a choice. Yeah. You know.
Well, I'll tell you, you talked about like hitting these ceilings or whatever. I'll tell you, I had a perspective shift a few months ago where Mike Claudio, the guy that is now operating as COO inside the company, we were talking one day and he was like, your ceiling is so big. He was like, you as a visionary have created a ceiling that is so big that even as it grows, you don't need a new ceiling. You got to raise the floor. And he was like, the floor has to rise. And so that, for me, the perspective shift inside of that is like, it kind of backs up what I've always said. Like, if you create a vision that's big enough, anything's possible. Mm-hmm. But you do have to raise the floor. Like, you know, what is the new standard? The new standard, the new standard. Because as you grow, your resources change. You know, like, I don't have to necessarily go find someone and turn them into this person. I have to go. I can now go and get that person. Mm-hmm. And so as you continue to do that, and also as you've invested so much time and energy and resources into the people that you have, you raise the standard. And then now, you know, what used to kind of feel like way up is now where we stand. Mm-hmm. And so now we're in this process of just raise the floor. And if we ever get the floor caught to the ceiling, then we'll look at raising the ceiling. But we got so much room right now between where we are and where the ceiling is that we just need to keep raising the floor. You know?
And I think as you raise the floor, I think the key with that, you know, some unsolicited advice would be just make sure that you're documenting those processes and you're documenting that standard as you go. So when you have to go out and you have to go hire, you know, the guy that you can just go out and hire now and you can pay for, they know exactly what they need to do when they get in that role. You know, I think that's a huge mistake that a lot of people make. Like, we create really good people in the industry, and we made this mistake in the foundation industry. We had we joked how there was about 8 to 10 of us that had this tribal knowledge that if one of us walked out the door, literally 30 years of experience walks out the door, even though I hadn't worked there for 30 years, because we've just been through so much together, you know? But the mistake that we were making is we weren't documenting what made us so good. We weren't documenting the tribal knowledge. So if one of us did leave or go on vacation or whatever, there's a very defined playbook of like, hey, just go do this. It's okay. Everything's gonna be fine. We don't need Ren here. We don't need Aaron here. We don't need any of these people here. Yep. Just go do this, you know? And that's the key, is while you're growing, you have to be documenting those things. You have to know what made you great to continue that process.
Well, I feel like everybody gets beat over the head with SOP. And me personally, I'm not writing them.
Yeah.
And I know that about myself. Like, I can tell you what needs to be done, but I'm not the guy to go in and document it. Mm-hmm. And so I went and hired those people, right? And like, and as SOPs get written, you know, here's the reason why. In my perspective, and you may have a different one, but my perspective is this. There's only 3 outcomes of a business. It fails, right? Which is most of the time. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is it's transferred to another successor, or it's transferred through an equitable separation, right? Okay. But it has to be transferable. And if you're not recording this and you're not doing this, right, we always talk about how we have a really young staff, you know, and, you know, like we're 30-year-olds. 28 to 30 is probably our average of our total company employees. But like over the next 10 years, that becomes 40. 10 later, it's 50. And if you're not documenting all that, the moment that they leave, what happens? It fails. And so you have to be thinking of your business as a transferable business from day one, because it's going to transfer. It's just, where is it transferring?
Yeah.
Right? Is it transferring into nothing? Is it transferring into the hands of, your children or other leaders? Or is it transferring at, like I say, as a sale? Like, what are you doing with that business? Because it can continue to grow, but at some point it will transfer.
Yeah.
And I think, the power of that is, if you document everything and everything's fixed on a certain process and not necessarily identified by the people in the company, but the process of the company is, you can have great people, but people come and go. Processes always have to stay.
Yep.
So, that is a big thing that in the beginning, like I say, it's just not natural to me.
Yeah.
I know what needs to be done, and I'm like, I tell everybody, like, I'm definitely the guy to tell you what to do, not how to do it. And Ross was the how to, and then as we scaled, it got to be a lot, and now Mike is more of a how to, and it's this constant wheel of, hey, new territory, this is what we did, this is how it could get better, this is what we updated to get it better, and like just continuously building that. And the cool thing about it is now, like inside of our company, like we're growing. We have 4 independent locations right now. The goal is to have 6 more in the next 18 months. And if you'd have told me that when we planted the second location, I told you lost your mind, because it was absolutely chaotic, because we didn't have any instructions to give. And we were like, why can't they just figure this out? And
Yeah, you're literally building the plane as you're flying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, the third location, hey, that went kind of smooth. The fourth location, excellent.
Yeah.
And so now we're in this process, and now we're refining and tuning. And, the goal would be at one point where we could, if the funds are there, we could launch 50 simultaneously, and they would all succeed.
Yeah.
And it just comes with documenting the process and having a tried and true process, and not being so egotistical that you can't improve it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the biggest thing. Like, one of our main core values is be the best. How do you do that? You got to be committed to being better than everyone else.
Yeah.
And that means getting better than yourself. Right. And eventually you just start competing with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is what we did. Well, this is what we're going to do now.
Yeah.
And so it's just this constant evolution of trying to get better and better and better. But
yeah, for sure. I think there's this razor's edge of SOPs. Like, I know that's such a dirty word. Like, I'm sure there's people that are going to listen to this and be like, God, I hate even hearing it. But there's a razor's edge, I mean, a lot of businesses that I walk into and coach, what they've done is they've tried to out-process a people problem. Yeah. And that is like, we walk in and everything is on paper. Every process is written out. It's like 300,000 pages worth of process, and they're just churning through people, and they're like, man, I don't know what's going on. Like, it's very clear what they're supposed to do. It's like, well, are we hiring the right people? Are we getting the right people in here? Are there 300,000 pages here that could be, 3,000 pages? We're ultimately like, let's provide some guidelines, but let's not just tell people how to do their job. Like, we don't need to handhold. Let's go hire good people and give them some guardrails. So there's kind of a razor's edge there, where you just have to figure out what's best. We use the 80-20 rule, which has been popularized in a ton of books. Document 20%. That's going to get you 80% of the way. But I really truly believe that you don't need to over document things. You don't need to have an SOP for everything. There is like a piece of critical thinking that you need to have if you're going to work for me. So like, I'm not going to tell you how to think. I hired you to think a little bit. Here's the guidelines that we operate in, and we got to make it work from there.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And we go through, like even in hiring, to where we used to be like, hey, we need to hire someone. And I would basically just go like pluck someone off the street and be like, you want to work with us now. And they were the only one. And then to like, shift 3 years later to where like we post a job and we have hundreds, if not 1,000 applicants. And then we go through there and we're like, wow, these are all really qualified people. And we're doing some vertical integration where we're buying a piece of IP and bringing things in and building this new arm of the company so that it can scale at the same rate as us, because we were starting to outscale one of our third-party processes. And in doing that, like we, started working with headhunters and stuff, and like they're out there running these things by, and it's just droves and droves of people. And they're like, what? We don't understand. Like, we're hitting all the criteria. We're like, yeah, but you can't touch culture because you don't know culture on paper. And when we meet with people, they're like, we're not asking them about that. Their resume got them in the door, but their personality and the way that they process information and the way that they work as a team is what's going to get them hired. And for every 100 people, there may be one. And we hold that. And it's sometimes it's frustrating because you're trying to solve a problem. But we found that anytime any time that we've ever settled and hired outside of our cultural values there that I've used this analogy in our company. It's like a splinter in your thumb. Like at first it may not be that bad. You can kind of see it, but it's not too bad. But eventually it festers up and gets squeezed out. And so, and I tell people, back when I was doing the interviewing, 30 employees ago, I would tell them like, you can fake it. You can 100% can fake all of this, but it will be found out, and it won't be found out by me. But it'll be found out by everyone you work with, and they will be the reason that you are gone because they're not going to put up with it because it's just here. You can't be an anomaly in this situation that we've built. Like it's just not going to happen. You can't do it. Like you can fake it only for so long, but it will come to fruition that you lied. And it just happens. And so we started having turnover, and we just decided to we got to fix the hiring process. We got to add some more layers, more steps, more things like from personality tests to, hey, shoot me a video telling me why you would be a good fit for this job. And some people won't. And if you're not comfortable doing that, then you're not a person for this company. And it just those kind of mind shifts of I'm not desperate for help. I need the right people for the process and being able to just live with it and say, look, if it takes longer, it takes longer, but we're going to find the right one. Those little things, massively improve the overall quality of people that are coming to work inside of our company.
Yeah.
But that all comes with growth.
Yeah. And you have the ability now. I mean, you build something when you build out a really good purpose and a really good core values, and you hire and fire based on those things alone, you have built something now where you can be picky. Yep. You can get 1,000 applicants and pick 0 of them. You can get 1,000 and pick 100 of them. You have the ability to be picky, but that's a lot of people look at that and say well, oh, that's a gift that you've been given. No, that was a lot of hard work that we had to create to be able to afford the luxury to be picky and get 1,000 applicants. Because at the end of the day, there's thousands of construction firms in Greenville, and all of them are trying to find people.
Yep.
But TJ can get 1,000 applications, right? So it's that's all because you were very clear about what you guys are going towards. You're hiring by values, which is super important. We don't just hire people. We hire based on the values, like you said. And I think it's a huge distinction that a lot of people get wrong. Go out and find good salespeople. That's great. But are they going to fit our culture? Or are they going to wreak havoc on my culture in the next 6 months? And I'm going to spend 6 years trying to replace, all the damage that's been caused.
Yeah. So let's shift it a little bit. So, you work in this environment around small to medium-sized businesses, and you have these conversations, and some people are on your doorstep desperate for help, and others are in passing I got this figured out. When what are some of those initial conversations like? Somebody's decided, hey, let's go into a coach-client relationship here, and what are some of those things? What are some of the questions you're asking? Because like I say, we have tons and tons of trades, other builders that watch this and see it as a resource to help answer some questions or get them thinking differently. Every time that the episode publishes, some people got my number. I'll get a text, or I'll get a Facebook message, or someone will drop a comment on YouTube or something saying man, this challenged me, And so what are those initial conversations like with Ren inside of Exit Momentum? What does that look like?
Yeah, I would say if we've entered into a client agreement where we're working together, those conversations are very clear before they say yes to me that they want to move forward. So it's day one, we're going in, we're setting an accountability chart, which you're very familiar with. Who owns what? What are their responsibilities? And we're putting people in seats. We're creating a little bit of strategy and plan in that first meeting to get them there. So that's all part of our process. Prior to that, though, I would say my initial conversations with business owners, most of the time it's a lot of touches, because at the beginning there's an ego. Let's be honest, you're a visionary of a business. There's an ego involved, and it's hard to let go of the control of your business a little bit and allow an outsider, so to speak, in. So I would say a lot of times it's 1, 2, 3 times where we're sitting together and we're talking. But ultimately, I'm just asking what are you struggling with? What can I help with more than anything? Most of the time, I can kind of nudge them in the right direction or provide a little bit of value. But I would say most of the time what they're struggling with is they're not clear on who owns what. They're not clear on their purpose as a company. And they're just, a lot of them have kind of just stumbled upon success and operated in the chaos for, it's crazy when you walk into a $5 or $10 million business, just how much chaos is actually there. Your visionary sitting. I mean, I don't know how many seats you sat in the first
I was about
year.
to go there and say that initial accountability chart's like, well, who does this? Well, me, and someone, me.
Yeah. And then when you put it on paper, you're like, whoa, like we're a multi-million-dollar business and we're operating with just me right now doing everything. And I'm not a finance guy. Like you would never hire a graphic designer to be a CPA, right? So we have to be really clear about those things. But I would say most of the time my initial interactions with them is they come to me and they say, hey, like I'm ready to give up the control a little bit and I need somebody to help me. I hate quoting Nick Saban because I'm not an Alabama guy, but the best players do want to be coached, and it takes some humility to say like, hey man, I'm ready for this. When I hear that, I'm like, hell yeah, man, let's run 1,000 miles an hour. I'm ready to go with you. So.
Well, I tell everybody, like, what we've built in the time period that we've built it would not have happened if we had not been open to coaching. And, for me, it was like in a personal development world to start with. Like, my first experience in any kind of container was, what does it take for you to be the optimal version of yourself? And the lure was business. But once you get in there, it's businessman, then business plan. And I saw it. Like I experienced the difference of operating with, integrity and a higher level of, expectancy of myself. And what does that look like? And you don't figure it all out at once. It is a lifelong commitment to just getting better. But it collapses so much time. Oh my gosh, it collapses so much time. So, you get in there and, I've said this a million times, you got to imitate before you can implement. And, you got to get around people that are doing it and you got to get around people that have done it. And you might not even understand what you're doing, but you're like, all right, yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So we're going to do this, and you just start imitating the success and then it starts making sense. But I think a lot of times, people go into it and there is ego. Even if you feel like you're not an egomaniac, you have one, and it's not serving you. And the quicker you discover it, you realize you really are an egotistical person, because it's alive in everyone. No one wants to be challenged. No one wants to be called out. No one wants to be seen. They want to be heard, but they don't want to be seen. And so everybody likes to frame up the version of themselves that people see. And then when you get into these coaching environments, you have to be willing to drag the skeleton out of the closet and notice where you're weak. And by doing that, you feel vulnerable in the beginning because all you're talking about is your weaknesses. But when you acknowledge all of those weaknesses and you start coming up with a plan to put people in place and put processes in place that lift your weaknesses, you get to operate in what you're good at, and you get to do it solely operate in what you're good at. And when you figure that out and you're like, I get to operate 80% of my day in the things that I love and I'm very good at, and I've got a team built around me that are operating 80% of their day in things that they're good at that I'm stuck at, and like you start seeing what's possible with building an actual company that can sustain it. I remember when we first kind of started this, and prior to Barndo, I had some other little small businesses and stuff that I'd done, and I'd been in the corporate world and experienced that, where you got a lid on you, and like it's just, you can be too good sometimes, and that's frowned upon. And then, but transferring out on my own, I remember reading books and stuff, and Tim Ferriss, the 10-minute work week or something like that, like a 10-hour work week. Yeah. I was reading that book and thinking like, this is BS. Like, what I mean? That's a snake oil salesman. Like he was like, can you leave your business and go on a 30-day sabbatical and come back and have a business? I'm like, of course I can't.
Yeah.
Who could? And now realizing that the only reason I didn't have those things is because I didn't have the skill set necessary to build something like that. And I've hired perspective, and I've hired experience, and I've collapsed time for myself. And now we're in a position where like, I don't have to show up. Yeah. I do because I love it. Like I'm addicted to it. Like this is the greatest part of my day. You know, like, but I don't have to be there. We have a team that runs, and this business does not run me. And it wasn't always that way. There was a lot of times where it was running me. We're working 20 hours a day, and every time there's something going wrong, me or Ross are the guys out there, and we've shared the story before. Like when we first got going, we were so excited because we had so many sales, and then we started executing and building, and we were out there, and me and him were on Christmas Eve or maybe Christmas Eve, one of the two. And we're standing on a job site, and we're literally waist deep in a hole trying to find a connection to a sewer pipe because we're building on a lot where a home had burnt down, and it was just a nightmare. And so we're out there, literally just and it was rain, it was just mud, and it's cold.
Just hoping the OSHA guy doesn't show up.
Our wives are pissed because it's Christmas Eve or Christmas Eve, and it's dark. Like it's dark. I remember we had the headlights on the trucks, and we're down in there doing this stuff, and the phone rings, and cows had gotten into a barn and ate all the insulation out of this barn. And to make matters worse, like not only did they do that, they've defecated all over this people's property. These people are losing their minds. And then the farmer whose cows they were, they've ingested insulation, and now 2 of them are laying on the side of the road dead. The rest of them are missing. And we're like, what do we do? And I can remember at that point in time, it was like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And now it's to a point to where like that burden is so evenly balanced. I still think director of construction probably has an unfair shake in the weight of things that happen, but Nick does a great job with it. But to be in a position now where like my business does not run me, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think people that come to me and have the ego piece of it, it's not a skills problem. When you hire me, it's not a skills problem. Everybody in the organization, you'll figure it out. TJ will figure it out. Anybody in the organization, anybody that starts a business, you can, what I do, there's no secret. You can go out and you can figure it out on your own. What you get with me is you get time. You're buying time with me because I'm going to accelerate what you're going to do in 10 years, and we're going to do that in a year or two. And you're going to look back and be like, dude, I didn't even think that was possible to even do in 10 years. And now we did it in 1. Like I have companies that look at me and say like, dude, I didn't think that was possible to do in my lifetime. And it's like, we did that in a couple years. And it's like, yeah, man, you just buy time with me. There's no special sauce. Everything has been talked about in business. I mean, everybody's heard right people, right seat. Everybody's heard culture. Everybody's heard purpose. Everybody's heard all of these things. But you buy time when you get a coach that says like, hey man, like, let's be really pointed. I'm going to push you along the way, and we're going to build this thing faster than you ever have, and it's going to reap what's sown faster than you ever thought.
It's also discipline.
Yeah.
You're hiring someone to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
Because when you run it, sometimes there's not a lot of accountability, and when things fall on your plate to be done, and you're spinning every plate in every department in your company, the things that need to be done get pushed to the back burner, to the back burner, to the back burner. Now you have someone who you've invested in that's holding you accountable to deal with this. And then you just start executing. I've said this a million times to Ross. It was nothing that we could have never done, but we had someone holding us accountable to do the things that we would have never done.
Yep.
And that again, it collapses time. Like we are living in, like we turned 3 last week.
It's crazy when you say that because I know what you've achieved. I'm just like, it's insane to me.
Yeah, and I tell it like in the beginning, I told everybody it's like we were riding a bucking bronco, and they were like, well, what's year 2 like? I'm like, same story, just bigger bull. And then it slowly has turned into something where it's like, hey, there is a little bit of a layer of management to this chaos. There's no lack of chaos.
Yeah.
There's no lack of it. If anything, it's amplified. But with systems, processes, people, and things in play, it's more manageable.
Yeah.
And so, it's just it's one of those things. And I mean, I don't want people to sit here and feel like I'm just shoving coaching down your throat.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna be honest with you. If you ain't doing it, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
And I've never worked personally with you.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the circles that you're in, there's no I know what the results will be. Like, you don't end up being inside of some of these circles unless you can execute. And so, being like Chris introducing us having coffee, and then instantly we left there, you added value to me that day, and then I was like, hey, I want you on the show. It's just one of those things. So if someone was listening, what does it look like to get in touch with you or pursue something like that?
Yeah, I would say Exit Momentum is the company, and you can go to our website, exitmomentum.com. And there's a coaching page on there. You can read a little bit more about me and my bio, and you can book right through the website if you want to. If you know TJ, you can reach out to TJ's got my number and information, and you can pass that around to whoever you want. Unless I start getting phone calls at 2 a.m., I'm going to come after you. But other than that, yeah, man, I think ultimately I'm new to Greenville. Like I'm out of the good old boys club. I'm trying to get in the good old boys club, but ultimately I'm new to the area. I'm pretty active in the community. I'm super active in all the networking events and everything. So it'd be pretty rare if you go to those things and you haven't seen me at this point. And I would just encourage you to come up and talk to me. I'd love to get an hour of your time, just talk a little bit, kind of like what we did, just talk about your business a little bit. I want to learn a little bit more. And ultimately, like, I'm learning from you guys too, as I go through this process, you know? So I think that would be the best way to get in contact with me, is through the website or through, you know, a connector like you or Chris. And you said something a minute ago where you're like, well, you've never had any personal experience with what I do. Sort of. Because Chris ultimately got a lot of what he did from our system and our operating system, and then he passed that on to you. So through several generations, so to speak, you've really been doing a lot of the tools and methods that we use at Exit Momentum.
And you need more. You need more people because you can only help so many.
Yeah, totally.
And there's so many people that need it. And, you know, so you said something earlier. You said you're not you don't like to quote Saban because you're not a Bama fan. And I know where you came from, so... Who is that team?
That's embarrassing. Well, I'm a Husker fan. I grew up a Husker fan. I'm originally from Kansas. And when you if
you were born in the 80s, it was a good time to be a Huskers fan.
90s, yeah, true. There's like this dot in the center of Kansas where you're not a KU fan and you're not a K-State fan and you're a Wichita State guy. Well, that was me. I went to Wichita State, but we don't have a football team. We haven't had a football team since the airplane accident in like the 70s or 80s, right? So ultimately, it's like you have a choice to make. You can either sell out and be a KU or a K-State fan, or you can be a Husker fan. So I was like, I was going to be a Husker fan.
You just became a Husker.
Yeah, and I've followed them a lot. It's been a hard life for me. A lot of coaches. I remember I lived in Columbia, Missouri for a while, and I'd go to Nebraska, Mizzou. And when they went to the SEC and we started losing, I was like, oh, this is horrible. And everybody's rubbing it in your face because you are on enemy territory. So, yeah, I've been through the ring.
Well, I'm a Carolina Gamecock fan, so I can share your struggle. The only difference is I can't look back to the 90s of the dynasty that we were. I can only look forward and hope for the dynasty we may become. And we were joking, Brad, that runs Studio 101, and I were like, we're the team of almost, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we almost could have been good.
But here's the thing. I would almost rather be a fan of a spoiler team than be a fan of a dynasty team, because the spoiler team almost most of the time is remembered more than the actual. I mean, like, Auburn got put on the map when they beat Alabama with that touchdown, that last second touchdown. Like
the field goal touchdown.
Then look how many recruits did they get? They wanted to go to Auburn, and it's like sometimes it's just the streak of luck that gets you some success. So
that's funny. I had to plug that, man.
Yeah, that hurts. I appreciate you doing it, though.
He took a little jab at Saban. I was like, well, are you a Husker?
Yeah.
Well, cool. How long have you been in Greenville?
So we've lived here. We moved August of 23, so a little over a year now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
We love it. Yeah. This community, I will say, we lived in Omaha, which there's a ton of industry in Omaha because Warren Buffett's there and a lot of people flock there, a lot of money.
Yep.
Greenville, there is so much opportunity here for businesses that it is ridiculous. Like, I remember how much we used to spend on marketing in the foundation world. And I look at here and I'm like, companies don't have to spend near what we would spend because the opportunity is everywhere. Look at all the people moving here. I know that it's annoying that there's a bunch of transplants like me coming here, but ultimately, like, there's something special here in Greenville, like super special. And I'm more than anything, I'm excited to be a part of that than I am to grow my business or do anything, because like I want to be a part of this place growing. Like it's about to explode here. Yeah. It's going to get crazy.
Well, it's been exploding, but I agree with you. It's going to get even crazier. But it's the Southeast. Mm-hmm. The Southeast, you got good weather, you got good politics, you got a lot of the right recipe to bring people here, and it's happening, right? Yep. And so you're seeing like this wild like separation of things, and technology is to thank for it, or to blame, depending on your perspective. But people are moving, and so you got like there's two places on earth, there's nothing like in the world: Saudi Arabia and then Silicon Valley in California, right? Like they're like two completely independent ecosystems where things can be vastly expensive and it doesn't matter because everybody there has got plenty of money.
Yeah.
But you start seeing some of the separation where things are moving, and like, you know, like from California, you got Austin, Texas growing, you got Nashville really growing. But then there's like this whole other segment of like the industrial side of things to where South Carolina is like really put a flag in the ground and are bringing massive manufacturing and industrial sized jobs and opportunities here. And behind that comes housing. And so we reap the benefits of it, you know. But yeah, the upstate of South Carolina is a special gem. It's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow and get better and better and better and bigger and bigger. And, you know, there's an exchange there. You lose some of the ability to, you know, leave here and go to Greenville in 20 minutes to now it's an hour and a half. But other than that, you know, there are a lot of opportunities. There's tons of business and tons of resources in Greenville. And, you know, we're strategically located between Atlanta and Charlotte. So you even have that overflow to where I joked the other day, like sitting in 85 traffic, I'm like, well, we're officially a suburb of Atlanta, you know, like, and but no, for sure. And, you know, ultimately, the goal for me is to help as many people as possible. And, you know, I remember starting this business and reaching out to people that I looked up to in this industry and getting ghosted over and over. And like no one that I was like, I really appreciate what this person's doing would even respond to an email or phone call. There was no way to get in touch with them. No one on their team, nobody. And like, I just completely ghosted out of the equation, just to ask questions. And it frustrated me and it discouraged me. I'm like, why is it this way? You know? And then even in the just residential building in general, like I reached out to so many people here in the upstate. Oh yeah, we'll get together. And then you just get nothing out of it. And then, you know, I did meet a guy down in like Houston, Texas area, who, looking back, the fact that he spent as much time talking to me is just bizarre. You know, it's a good dude. Because once I like started researching the company and who he was, I'm like, man, I should have paid for those phone calls. Golden human being, spent some time answering some questions, and it wasn't even like the information I needed. It was the things I thought I needed at the time. But it was just, you know, that gave me some hope. And I remember thinking, like, I want people to see us the way that I see him. And so we just kind of opened it up and we share everything openly. Like, you know, there's no secrets to what happened here. It's just a lot of freaking hard work. And, you know, it takes a lot of challenges and a lot of testing and a lot of failing and a lot of retesting and a lot of failing and a lot of retesting. And then, you know, along the way, you build out some stuff. And like people, you know, from a consumer standpoint, oftentimes they only see the success highlights. They only see like the things that are working because we amplify those and we market those, you know, and like they don't see all the things. And people in the entrepreneurial space, you know, you can almost get an impression that like every time I go to do something, it doesn't work how I thought it was going to work. And this guy's crushing it. No, the thing is I'm just testing more now. Like, you know, as you grow and resources get better and you get a better perspective on things, you can do multiple tests at a time. Whereas there was a period of time where everything we did was a test. And so, you know, just being able to go out and do that and like just freely give access to people. And like, you know, I know that anyone that would sign up to work with you would benefit greatly from it, no matter what industry they're in. You know, so this is what this is for. Like originally it was intended like, oh, we're going to just educate consumers, but there's only so much of that you can do. You know, the best thing you could do as a consumer is come in and see us. Because you need to talk to my team, not me. Because now they know more than I do about the process. You know, like I get my people coming to me all the time like, hey, your mom and dad said you might could help us. I was like, I cannot help you at all. But I'll get you connected with somebody who can, because I'm not in the day-to-day things to be able to articulately tell you the exact steps that are necessary. But in the business thing, that's what I live in. And so like this has become a huge resource of that. And like after about, I don't know, the first 3 months of this, the overwhelming feedback that I got, not to say that like clients haven't sent me stuff and they listen every week and I get these like high fives and they're like, man, I love listening to the show, but more and more has become other entrepreneurs going like, hey, you said something the other day, like, let's unpack that a little bit. And so I enjoy that more than anything in the world.
Yeah, you never know who's listening. I would say like you have a pretty captivating personality. I mean, you're a big guy, big personality, right? But ultimately like you communicate really well and there's a lot of vulnerability with you. I think it's really cool that you knew early on, like I need help growing this thing because it's going to be chaos. and, hooking up with Chris and like, there's this group of people in Greenville, like how we got connected and Chris and like that whole group, there's like the humble entrepreneur that's out there that genuinely just wants to help people. And like, I enjoy working in that network more than I enjoy working in the network of, I don't have time for you. Like the people that blow me off, it's like, okay, well, they probably weren't an ideal client for me anyways, because like I need people to be open. I need people to be vulnerable. I need people to like let me into their world a little bit to understand how I can help. So I would say like, I got a lot of the blow-offs and that kind of stuff, but I appreciate that there are people like you and people like Chris that are out there that are killing it, but also smart enough to know like I still need to make time to like leave my legacy with other people because there's a lot to learn. I mean, there's a lot to learn from you guys. I would say I'm a little bit of a double-edged sword in your guys' world because I have the construction background. It may not look like it. The beard kind of helps, but I have the construction background and the business piece of it. So there's a lot of construction companies here that like I think I could really like turn their world upside down and help them through.
I know you could.
But,
well, and I tell people this all the time. Like, I can't drop everything to see you.
Yeah.
But if you will reach out, I will make time. It might not be for 90 days, but I will make time to meet with you and do the things. And like, everybody gets sent to Haley. Haley runs my life from the professional standpoint. But like, I do make that. But the thing about like bringing someone like you in here, bringing a Chris in here, a Nick in here, a Mike, and all these different people that have played that role is, there are networks of coaches. This is what your time is for.
Yep.
And so, like, as much as I would love to meet with everybody that messages me, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Right. Andy Stanley said this in one of his first leadership books was, if I had coffee with everyone that wanted to have coffee, I'd no longer be the guy people want to have coffee with. Yeah. And I feel that more than ever. Like I can't do it with everyone. I try my best, but overall, like you got to get tied into someone who's willing to exchange time for money and come in and help you. And, so I appreciate you coming in and spend some time, man. And like, just laying a little bit of a foundation of like how people can get started, what that looks like, anything else you want to dig into while you're here?
Not really. I mean, like I said, exitmomentum.com. You can email me. I'm comfortable giving my email. I don't know if you do that.
Yeah,
it's Ren, REN, at exitmomentum.com. You can just email me directly. Love to connect with you and figure out a little bit more about your world. But I appreciate this opportunity. I know that we're going to do another thing coming up on YouTube, which I'm super excited about. You're going to get into my world when we do that, which I'm super stoked about.
Use promo code Barndo. No.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But yeah, man, I don't really have anything else. I'm excited to be a part of the community, and I appreciate you letting me into this thing. And this isn't the last of our relationship. I know that.
No, for sure, man. Well, I appreciate you making time to come out and put some value into the listeners, man. And again, if anybody's listening, you're on the edge of your seat, you're just thinking like, well, I don't know, just email the guy. I mean, he's giving you every way to access him, and this is what he's here for. So I appreciate that, man. And I hope somebody connects with you through this.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
I appreciate it, brother. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to the Barndo Show podcast. If you're watching on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this content, hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And then be sure to check us out on all of our social media platforms at The Barndo Co. Super simple to find us. And then when you're ready to dive in a little more, maybe look around some of our available floor plan options or take a look at the gallery of our work, or maybe you're ready to connect with our team and explore what it looks like to build your dream barndominium, you can visit us online at thebarndoco.com.